Hello, Keith Myers here again. This is going to be my Chum Kiu video part 5, Chum Kiu drills. In other words, you've learned the form now. What are good ways to drill it and practice it, other than obviously going through the form over and over? Where you can break it down by pieces, right? And we'll even practice portions on the dummy, because the dummy is a great thing to have even before you get to dummy form level. There's all kinds of things you can practice on the dummy when you don't have a partner readily available. So let's go over some of the things from section 1. The obvious thing to practice is that pivoting with a double Bong Sao. So I just pivot. Remember, I'm starting square, 45-degree line, back and forth. Nice and snappy, but I pause to make sure I'm in a solid position and I haven't over-rotated. I can just practice that over and over. And I put my right hand on top. I just do that multiple times. I practice my pivot, I practice with my double Bong Sao. And remember, I want my elbow right in front of my shoulder. Right there. Not wide like this, because then that would put me in an unstable position. It's right in front of my shoulder. Nice, solid structure. My arms are a little bit lower than shoulder height, so if somebody pressed, I can absorb. If they were too high, they pressed, I'd go over backwards, right? Nice, solid structure. Okay? Then the other portion of this is the Yi Bong, the pivoting Bong Sao. And so, of course, you just practice it with Bong to Lan. First, I practice with this hand just relaxed, so I get used to just a nice, gentle roll. And this would be like somebody's pressing on my forearm, bringing me to Bong Sao, or they're pressing back, putting me into the Bong Sao. They make me do Bong Sao, they make me do Bong Sao, depending on the force. So I'm not putting a lot of force into the motion because I'm assuming I'm riding along when somebody else is applying force. So the snap is in my stance, and since my elbow is down in front of my hip, my elbow follows. So I just leave this hand here. And do the other side. And notice I'm 45-degree line, square. 45-degree, square. Okay, and then once I'm confident, I can do it in this nice, relaxed fashion, right? Then I start putting a little more snap into it. Snap it out, snap it back. And by pulling this hand back, helps me snap this one down because it's like a two-arm action, right? So I snap them both up, snap them both down. Then I switch. Then I can do just the pivoting Bong Sao. It's the same Bong Sao, it's just now I'm alternating. But now, instead of it coming from here, that's pretty easy to see how that rolls forward. Now I'm shooting it from right from the center from my Wu Sao hand. So it's a little more subtle, but it should be the exact same forward rolling motion. Still, my elbow is directly in front of my shoulder. My elbow is no higher than my shoulder. My Wu Sao is back here, not directly on center line, but just kind of behind it, like I'm sweeping something that way. Then I switch. So that's easy. So now I'll do it this way. From here, this hand's going to shoot out and punch. Bong Sao. See how this is already in position? Well, I should be able to just punch. That's the whole purpose of the Bong Sao, is to open things up. Punch. Bong Sao. Punch. Bong Sao. And then I switch. And this is going to be important later when we do the Lop Sao drill, where this hand is going out to Lop Sao, but really, it would have been a punch. And the guy stops my punch, so I Lop Sao. I shouldn't be thinking of, I'm going to do this. That's an extra step when I could have just hit him, right? So that's an important drill. It's from Bong Sao to shoot straight out with the punch. Boom. Bong Sao, punch. Okay? So that gets us to, boom. This one we're going to do on the dummy. You can practice any of these, break them out in the air. I'm just showing you the most common ones to really emphasize. So if we move on to section 2, section 2 is the pow bong, the throwing bong. So obviously I start here, I walk with it. I get to a certain, I run out of length, however many reps that is, and then I do my shifting bong a few times, I drop, and I go back the other direction. But see, this should be the exact same position. It's just I've stepped with it. Still elbow in front of the shoulder. Right there's the center. I drop. Step, 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 pivot, 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 step, 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 pivot, 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 step, step, step. And I could just do that back and forth to practice that stepping Bong Sao. Now, talked about in my other video, if you've seen it, in application that might very well be stepping back off the line. Something's coming at me, I want to get out of the way as I Bong Sao. So we also practice this with the opposite footwork. So I can be here, now I step that way. Pivot, pivot, pivot. Pivot, pivot, pivot. I mean, if I got bored with doing that, I could go forward, 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 back, 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 pivot, 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 back, 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 forward, forward, forward. So just using those ideas, you just play with it, how you want to put it together, right? And at the end of this one is the punch this way, and that catching the center, which we'll practice on the dummy and coming back. The other big one then in the third section is the Dai Bong. So the Dai Bong, remember I'm pointed that way, hands are here, so I just go up however many reps, and then from here I'm not going to finish it. I'm going to come to here, and then I'm going to do that turnaround. I step and I turn, and I go back. And then I step and I turn, and I go back. Right? Back and forth for as many steps. Remember, that's a kind of a 2-in-1 drill. I'm practicing both sides of the Bong Sao. I can also break it out and practice just the rear hand one the same way I practice the throwing bong, the pow bong. So now it becomes a pow dai bong, a low throwing bong. So the idea here now, I'm going that way with my low bong. So now I'm just letting it kind of come back to my hip so I can sweep across center with the step. Right? And then switch. Switch. And of course, if I can do it going forward, more likely, I'm standing here, all of a sudden something's coming at my midsection, I got to get out of the way, and I Bong Sao. I'm going to be stepping back, not forward. So it's going to be, then I can practice it this way. Bong. Switch. 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 Okay? So, those are some of my ideas for practice. Now, let's look at some of the bits that are good to... Okay, let's talk about some Chum Kiu level drills on the dummy. I think a lot of people don't get a chance to do this or haven't seen it simply because if they kind of come up in a kind of a commercialized school where there's 10, 12, 15 students and one dummy, they usually don't get to play with the dummy until they reach dummy form level simply because of an access issue. But if you have a dummy available to you, you have one at home, this is a great way to practice the biomechanics from your Chum Kiu form. So let's just kind of take it step by step and look at some of the things we can practice on the dummy. The first thing is that right from the opening, that Chum Sao that shoots out and then strikes, it's going forward and inward, right? So on the dummy I can practice that. Then I strike. Striking either with the palm or even the thumbs in the eye, right? So it comes from here. And it really gives me that sense of gripping inward and downward and forward. Boom, which is a Chum Sao. Chum Sao, right? Boom. So that's one thing that's easy enough to practice on the dummy. This you can't really do on the dummy because you're turning such a big, such a big motion. Then we have here, we have the Jeep Sao, or that there's a lot of ways to apply this, to think about this, like I said in the previous videos. But on the dummy, we can practice it like it's an arm break. I can come straight up, or I can kind of come at an angle. In the Yip Man systems, you don't usually see this on the dummy, but in the Wing Chun, traditional Wing Chun, they have this motion on the dummy, right out of the Chum Kiu set. Considered an arm break. So I can practice coming straight up like I would in the form, and I can practice coming at an angle, this way. Okay, so that's another thing. Now, when we get to the Yi Bong, the pivoting Bong, that's an important motion. That is a very good motion to practice on the dummy. I center on this arm, right? I'm not standing square to the dummy. I'm standing with that arm on my center. And then from here, I can practice my pivot up. Now I have to clear the arm just a little bit, and as I pivot back, I'm on this arm. So see how that puts it right in the position for this? This one's right in the position here. So that gives me that sense. Remember the Yi Bong, that sense that somebody's giving you pressure and you're responding to the pressure. Well, the dummy can't press against me, but I can press against the dummy. So I kind of get the same sort of effect, right? I press up, back, up, back, up, back, up, back. And then I can start putting a little more snap. See, the dummy keeps me honest because this is not a Bong Sao. I don't want to be shooting over this arm. I have to become between the two arms and lift from below. See, from here, I have to lift between these two arms. I have to clear this arm. So it makes me make sure I'm shooting from below and not doing this swinging motion like this. Okay? And I do it on, same thing on this arm. Now I'm centered here on this arm. Here's my Bong to Bong Sao. So from here, I'm shooting my elbow up, and then my Bong Sao. Back. Now into this I can put that opening motion, which is basically, you could consider again, these motions can be interpreted in many ways. I can think of this as a Bu Sao, I can think of it as a Fox Sao, doesn't really matter. That sweeping opening motion. From here, I turn this into a Lap Sao, and I strike. Just from this position, there's that opening, right? And here's the opening motion. One becomes a Lap Sao, one becomes a strike. So that's part of that opening motion, and it's also that Lap Sao. Same way, I center up on this arm. So here I'm practicing two things in one. I get a chance to practice this, and I'm also practicing this. And this is right out of the dummy form. If you're familiar with the dummy form, you'll know this is one of the sections of the dummy form. Like that. So by doing a lot of these sets, as I'll mention, it's like your preview in the dummy form. You're preparing for it because the dummy form, of course, is based on your previous material. So it's going to incorporate a lot of the things from the Chum Kiu form. Okay? So we've got this one. And remember, we're here. We fire across. And then there's that recovery motion to the center, which is another Bong Sao. Sometimes it's called Chum Kiu Bong Sao. Some people would consider it a Bong Sao, but it's just that coming in, recovering the center. From my arm out here and I'm kind of facing here, so I can practice. I just come out, I recover, and I hit. Hit. But I get used to that coming in, leading with my elbow, sinking into that arm to capture the line, and it's just spring right off. I'm out, I come in, capture that line, my elbow force, hit. Okay, that's pretty much for section 1. Now, remember section 2 starts here, and it's that stepping bong, the pow bong, the throwing bong, okay? The idea here is I'm not really in contact, and I'm stepping up and I'm catching it. So on the dummy, again, I can center on this arm, I step, I pivot, I drop. I could do it, I could drop between each one. Here, boom, pivot, boom, step, boom, pivot, boom, step, boom, pivot, boom, step, boom, pivot, boom, step, boom, pivot, boom. And this, again, this is checks me, right? This is kind of defining my center. I'm centering on this arm. Boom, when I drop, that should be right there, all right? Now I'm going to do that arm. So I step. Boom. If I stepped right, I'm centered on that arm. Then I pivot. I should still be centered on that arm. I step again. I'm centered on that arm. I pivot. I'm still centered on that arm. Okay, so you get the idea. This throws the elbow, throws the bong out there. But I'm not coming way up here, and I'm going forward. My force in the dummy, since the dummy's now providing no resistance, is that way. And you can feel that. I'm not coming across like this. I'm going that direction. Okay? And the dummy gives me a nice resistance to make sure I'm on target. Okay? So that's that very important motion. Practice on the dummy. Just walk back and forth. Walk back and forth. And again, that's going to show up later in the dummy form. It'll be motions where you just come in, right? So, it's an important motion. Step, drop, pivot, drop. Step, drop, pivot, drop. Step, drop, drop. Okay? Then that section ends with this. Remember, it's not this whipping punch. It's capturing the line, and it's a punch all in one motion. So that's the sense where, remember that in the first section, we were kind of facing, our arms are wide, and we just catch the center. This time, it's like I'm out here, and I have to pivot and turn to catch the center. And as I do, my arm is up, and so I'm just bringing it in to catch the center like this. So you could almost say that's a high Bong Sao, right? It's just my fists are closed. It's essentially the same motion. Or it could be out here. The important thing is, again, if I'm centered on this arm, my arms are wide, boom, I'm clearing that off my center without leaning back or making anything funky. I'm just pivoting, clearing my center. And again, that could be like this. That's one interpretation from the form that's right out of the dummy. That motion sweeping inward is this. Right? Here. Which is Bong Sao on the dummy. It's just I've closed my fist in the form. Now, that could also obviously be interpreted as a punch, but again, it's not this whipping punch like a big uppercut or something. It punches from that position. So I can practice that on my dummy. And this is not necessarily an uppercut. I would say, if you were going to compare it to anything, this would be like a boxer's shovel hook, right? From here, I just drop. It's dropping, elbows aligning with my hip, and I punch. Okay? Now, from this section, after I've done this, remember there's that recovering the center in this direction, coming here. Boom. Right? My hand is out here. Boom. So in this one, my hand, I'm turned this way. Now there's something coming. I sense that there's something coming in this direction. I want to cover myself as I turn. If I just turn like this, something still might smack me in the head. So there's that little bit of lift. I'm protecting my head as I turn and I catch the line. So I'm here, I turn back. I'm here, I turn back, I strike. I'm here, turn back, I strike. I'm here, turn back, I strike. On this side, it's just this punch just puts me in this position. There's nothing to say that these have to be done back to back. Remember, this is conceptual, not a one-for-one technique thing. Just my arms are out here, and now I want to recover the center that's coming from this direction. I lift to cover my head, and I drop, and I strike. I'm out here, I've covered my head, I drop down, here I've caught the center, and I can go right into a strike. I'm just out here. Okay, so that's that motion. Okay, section 3 is the die bong, the walking double bong. Well, obviously I can't do that on the dummy, but I can do the back part. Because remember, one of the ways we practiced it was like this. Okay? So now I'm centered on this arm, and I pivot with my Bong Sao, with my die bong. And I don't want to go like this. I'm still going that direction. You can't really tell it, but my force is going that way. So if my dummy would spin, he'd be spinning around away from me. I wouldn't be rotating back towards me. And again, anybody familiar with the dummy form will have seen this. It's an important move from the dummy form. It's just practicing that die bong from the Chum Kiu form. Now remember how we talked about I could do it stepping back, right? I can do that on the dummy because I can pivot and step back at the same time. So that's one way to practice one of those low Bong Saos. And then we have this funky thing at the end, remember? Where we're here, come up, boom. So again, this is teaching us short power. You really can't feel it in the air, but you can tell it on the dummy. And the way to practice it on the dummy, here I'm standing here, I've done this, right? So that stepping up is just, I recovered the line, right? I got a hold of him. My hand started low, I recovered the line. And now I'm going to use my hips and body action to hit the dummy without drawing my arms back. I'm here. I'm here. I can do it with this foot forward. So it's a very good way to develop that oomph, that I don't even have to start from here. I can just be here. And that's what that very last portion of that form is teaching us, is how to, that short power. There's no step, there's no turn, but there's body action there. And the kicker is, and a lot of people don't realize this, but once you learn that from Chum Kiu, when you go back and do your Siu Lim Tao form, you can put that kind of thing into a lot of the movements of your Siu Lim Tao form to express more power rather than just standing with a still body. Okay? So that's some ideas. training the Chum Kiu form on the dummy. And if you think about it and you play with it, you can probably come up with some more of your own. But hopefully that'll get you started.